All right, I'm now joined by Forrest and by our good friend Daniel Bessner. My image probably looks really weird right now because I had to use my laptop today, so the angle is strange. But in any case, we are also going to be joined by Ryan Lake when he sorts out his internet issues. But let's just let's go right into this. So we've on the stream we've watched Mean Streets, Goodfellas, Casino, and
Raging Bull.
We did Raging Bull. Yep. But I think we are almost done with the Scorsese gangster movies. At least there's still we could be completists and do Gangs of New York. But
actually, it'd be interesting to see. I think he makes almost every wrong choice in that movie, which is pretty interesting. For a genius, when a genius misfires, that's pretty interesting. That movie's horrible. Gangs of New York it's almost unwatchable. Besides the Bill the Butcher performance, even though it's his collaboration with Leo, right? That's his first one.
I think so. Yeah.
I've seen scenes. I don't think I've ever bothered to watch the full Gangs of New York.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd be down to do that. I'd be down to do a Gangs of New York.
All right, nice.
Maybe with somebody who specializes on 19th century history. That would actually be really interesting.
Okay, yeah, no, we'll find somebody. We'll do that. But today we are talking about The Departed. So this is an interesting movie in a way that Forrest pointed out before we got started. Which is that there are always, like all of the Scorsese gangster movies, there are Jewish, Irish, and Italian characters.
And they each get their day in the sun. I mean, in one movie, like Casino, I'd say was the one where, Jewish characters are allowed to shine the most. This is the one where Irish characters are allowed to shine the most. I mean, I don't know. Goodfellas kind of has a lot of Robert De Niro's character is supposed to be Irish, and Ray Liotta is supposed to be half Irish, but this is kind of the movie that's the most Irish, I feel like, out of all of them.
Yeah,
is De Niro the only one to have played Irish, Italian, and Jewish in Scorsese movies? I think he might be.
Yeah, I
think he embodies all of them.
But I mean, De Niro's just kind of allowed to play anything in Scorsese movies. I feel like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that Irish people are the non-Italian ethnicity he seems to be most interested in. Between this Gangs of New York, The Irishman, obviously, and I feel like I may be missing something, but and certainly of those three, The Departed is about Irishness. And some of those other movies are about Italianness in ways that Casino is certainly not about Jewishness. It's about a Jewish guy who is in a world that's largely defined by Italian gangsters and and other kinds of people in Las Vegas. Whereas
at the same time, though, I mean, I don't know. I feel like maybe Scorsese's being uncomfortable portraying Jewishness in any kind of stereotypical way, I guess, because he isn't. I mean maybe. Although I will say that the guy in Goodfellas is. I mean, it's not a. I mean, I'm not saying that was that Morty did embody any sort of bad Jewish stereotypes, but I could see how somebody could make the case. Yeah,
I think he embodied certain Jewish stereotypes. I don't think it was hateful.
No.
But it was, I mean, he's definitely, I think he's Boychik, and he has like this old world Yiddish. Morty's a little bit stereotypical, I think it's fair to say.
It's interesting. Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort I didn't read the whole book, but like parts of the book, he is obsessed with his own Jewishness, I think, in a way that doesn't shine through in that movie. Because he kind of references it, like he references it pretty constantly in the book, as like part of his narrative. He's like an old Jewish guy, like he's like, a Jewish gangster in the best way. Like, he's kind of throwing it around and defining himself in some ways by his Jewishness in a way that definitely doesn't come through in Scorsese's Wolf of Wall Street.
I wonder if he's nervous about it a little bit. That's interesting because it seems very unlike him to sort of hold it at that length, especially if it's so clear in Belfort's book. I wonder why. That's a really interesting question.
I think that's what I was trying to say with the stereotype. I feel like maybe he's maybe it's because with Irish characters and Italian characters, he is Italian, and there's not really like a case to be made maybe that he's being anti-Irish with his with the commentary he's making in The Departed. But I think that there probably is a certain nervousness about portraying Jewish characters in a certain way or telling a certain narrative about them, that he could find, like, people would find offensive, I guess, to his work. But I don't know. It's interesting because it is unlike him.
So speaking of Irish stereotypes, we're now joined by Ryan Lake. He's a philosophy professor at Georgia State University Perimeter College.
Hey. I'm trying to do this on my phone. I'm trying to get the audio to go to my headphones. Hold on a second.
It looks like they're bathed in red light. I kind of like it.
Yeah.
It goes well with the Scorsese aesthetic because in pretty much every Scorsese movie, characters are bathed in red light.
Well, especially in this one. That happens at several points. Yeah.
Jack Nicholson has that one scene where he's sitting in the balcony and everything is dark red.
Yeah, but very much so. Yeah. Jack Nicholson, what a performance!
I know. I love that. Yeah, no, he's essentially playing him as the devil.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Like literally, like a Mephistopheles-esque character for sure.
Yeah. I appreciate Ryan, by the way, trying to make me feel better about having to do this from my laptop today. So, or maybe trying to one-up me. I'm not sure, but yeah, no, the Jack Nicholson, performance was obviously fantastic. Like very all right, some Mephistophelian, from the beginning.
Mephistophelian.
All right, say it again.
Mephistophelian. I don't know. I'm just
Mephistophelian. I feel like I'm saying it wrong, but yeah, from the very beginning, when he's sort of slowly walking through the shot in darkness, and then you see him go into the whatever that was, that store thing, where we had, and then like his dialogue with the daughter, was very devilish, and then like he's tempting, the little kid. So yeah, right from the beginning, he was really playing it that way pretty hard. And we should talk about, the beginning because, it was interesting. All right. We were talking about.
I think Ryan was just trying to bathe himself in darkness.
Okay. All right, I see.
I'm just Nicholson here. Yeah.
So he, yeah, like we were saying beforehand, this is very far from, I think I've got a lot of complaints about the ending. I got kind of angry at the ending when I saw it originally. And then I'd half convinced myself this time that I'd misremembered it, or I was being unfair, that I got really angry at the ending this time because I'd half convinced myself of it.
I remember I had forgotten it because I hadn't seen it, I think, since we saw it in the theater then. And I had forgotten what the ending was and how angry I was at the ending.
And actually, I forgive the ending because it resulted in, I think, the last good Simpsons joke where they they do the rat, and then Ralph comes on screen and goes, "The rat symbolizes obviousness." That's a really good joke.
There's also that.
I saw it.
I don't remember if it's that episode where there's the one where Bart becomes obsessed with Southie. And
I don't remember that. I do remember the joke Danny was talking about. In fact, like throughout, I think the last 3 minutes of the movie, I was thinking about it, and then the rat came on. I was like, "Yep, there we go. There it is." But
it's so bad. I mean, that is insane that could get from like someone saying that out loud in movie theaters.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
Yeah.
It's probably the worst like few frames of his career.
yeah,
Horrible.
yeah. So I thought that like if you can put aside the ending, up until then, I thought that it was a very good movie. It wasn't amazing, like, you know, Goodfellas or Casino, some of these others, you know, but it was very good. And again, that made me, yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about it, but that made me very angry about the ending. But up until then, like, look, you know, Nicholson's performance was fantastic. You know, Leo, I mean, possibly the best performance I can think of for him.
Yeah, he really knocks it out of the park with just how, I mean, like pathetic, like charming in a strange way, but like pathetic at the same time.
Yeah.
And of course, that's not, you know, entirely like that's not his fault, like the character, you know what I mean? But like, there's just this like, I don't know, there's just this aura about him that's like everything is going to go wrong for this character.
I think what really damns the movie is the love story. There's a lot of time devoted to it, and it doesn't really make sense.
No, it doesn't. Like, I think that's I don't know that I think it's what damned it, but it is. But like, as I was watching it, and again, this is the first time in many years, possibly since I saw it with Ryan, that I've seen it all the way through. And as I was rewatching it, it really struck me actually how weird, at least the Leo half of that was. But
well, it's very purposely designed to be like, oh look, they're crossing paths, even to the point where he's being cuckolded by Leo. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so the point of it is kind of like you get the point of it without needing all of those scenes devoted to it.
Yeah.
No, you know, and I get the point, but I mean, I just thought it was like the execution was like kind of strange and clumsy. Like,
yeah,
I believe the Matt Damon half. I couldn't really suspend disbelief about the Leo half.
Yeah, the Leo half just did not make any sense at all.
It made no sense. It literally just makes no sense. Yeah. So I think if you excise, I'm surprised someone, maybe they have done it. If you take out the romance, I think it becomes a better, like a significantly better movie.
Mm-hmm.
And
no,
also,
we're gonna get canceled for saying the one big female character in this movie. You need to take those scenes out,
or make them good, or make them make sense. I mean, the thing is, it doesn't. There's almost no way. I've never seen Infernal Affairs.
I watched it for the first time to. Yeah, they don't really have the. The Leo scenes are really. I mean, at least from what I got from it, because some of the subtitles were not like available in the Amazon version. They'd have full conversations and like only half the subtitles would be on. But so from what I got from it, the cuckolding part really isn't like he goes to see a shrink in like the Leo's character goes to see a shrink, but that's not really played up in it. Also, the Infernal Affairs. What I thought was interesting about it is that they do not devote as much time to like the father figure, like son figure dynamic, I guess, that these characters kind of end up having with Jack Nicholson's character. I mean, Leo obviously is turning on him. I mean, not turning on Leo already. Like, is the police like, you know what I mean? Like, is the person already like designed to bring him down? But even in the other, like the Matt Damon character, it wasn't really. They didn't really spend much time on like their dynamic. Like when he finally turns on him and shoots him at the end of Infernal Affairs, like you don't really get like a picture of like he had this big father-son relationship with him. It was just kind of like this guy was his boss that asked him to go into the police force. And
yeah. Trail didn't have a lot of emotional resonance. It just like, oh, okay, yeah, he's turning on him.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because it raises questions about what American film executives think movies need to have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that they feel that it needs to have, one, a love story. I mean, I really do think the love story makes this movie bad when it would have otherwise been good. It is a better movie than I remembered. I remembered like really not liking it, and was sort of like startled that everyone liked it. That was really shocking. Ooh, now that Ben's not here, let's trash him. So it's the stupidest thing he's ever done. But it does raise really interesting questions about like how these things get translated into sort of Americanized versions. And I would actually be curious how this movie did in the Asian, particularly the East Asian market. Given that Infernal Affairs there's 3 of them, right? There's like, I've never seen.
There's 3 Infernal Affairs. Apparently the first one that I watched is the one The Departed is based on, is the good one. The other 2 are not so good. So it's kind of a RoboCop thing, I guess, going on again. But
I met Pearl Verhoeven once.
What's that?
I met Paul Verhoeven in a coffee shop in Ithaca.
He didn't come on to our RoboCop stream to talk about it.
Oh yeah. You should have reached out. I'm sure he'd be really interested.
Maybe we can try that for a Total Recall.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Actually, I think he has been on Chapo, if I'm remembering right. But so it's actually not completely outside of the realm of imagination, although very unlikely. Yeah, so I mean, I guess that is one thing to think about this movie is about what I heard Dan just before I started trashing me, when I was switching computers, that the relationships in this movie, like Jack Nicholson to Matt Damon, which is the first one you really see. Matt Damon to the Shrink, Leo to the Shrink, which we already talked about, and Jack Nicholson to Leo, which was also a little weird. Like that's like that they sort of threw that in at the end, that somehow he'd become the person he trusted the most, which I'm not sure I believe that. But so we could kind of go.
He had so many people working for him, and then I don't.
Yeah. Somehow the one who was the one who started working for him most recently, and he half suspected it multiple times of being a cop. Is the one that he trusted.
I mean,
most.
he starts at. I mean, at the beginning of their relationship, he's smashing his broken hand with a boot. Are you a cop? Are you still a cop? Then all of a sudden, I trust you more than anyone else.
Well, one interesting, I guess, through line of that is that he suspects him of being a cop, though, and then Matt Damon clears him because he gives him the information, and the information never gets flushed down the pipe. So that's kind of an interesting part of that, because he kind of ends up trusting him the most after finding out that information.
Yeah. So we start out at the beginning of the movie. Nicholson has that amazing opening rant. I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me, which is both
great.
I think it's probably my favorite opening of any of these movies. But no, it's a fantastic line. It's both it manages to both be badass Mephistophelian, gangster dialogue, and also to oddly sound a little bit like the theses on Feuerbach. The philosophers have merely interpreted the world. The point is to change it. But then we go into him doing in a way, it's like a much darker and sleazier version of Henry Hill's backstory in Goodfellas. That you see him go in and recruiting Matt Damon's character as a little kid. And it's a very, like I said, I think it's a really, really well done scene, but it's like creepy and sleazy. Like he's asking the shopkeeper he's shaking down. He asks his daughter if she's had her period yet.
There's so much going on with his character in that scene, because he's showing the shop, he's obviously able to get away with whatever he wants because nobody's protecting the shopkeeper, and he's kind of shaking him down. So, he's basically making the point that he could do whatever he wants to the shopkeeper's daughter. And then he's, when he talks to Matt Damon's character as a kid, like he's showing like, I know where you live. I know who you are, like who your family is, before eventually bringing him in, as like a smaller, I don't know, as like a kid to like do his bidding, I guess. So there's just a lot, like the creepy things with the daughter, where he's kind of just showing his power in that situation by being able to like get away with just hitting on this guy's like prepubescent or just pubescent daughter. Like that scene, I think, shows so much of what his character or who his character is, and provides the baseline for the rest of the movie. Him to just go off on like his Jack Nicholson.
And I mean, look, he's clearly like, his character is the best thing in that movie. Like it's what Scorsese's probably best at is doing these really colorful, gangster characters, and he is like a fairly unique one. He feels very different, to me, from any character in any of these other movies. Jack Nicholson's performance of him is amazing. And there's a lot of like interesting stuff going on at the beginning with the ethnic politics of it. Like literally the first thing you see, they don't really call attention to it, or they don't spell it out. They call attention to it. They don't spell it out. Is the first thing you see is the images of like the busing wars from Boston in the 70s, with black kids being bused to school and like mobs stopping them. And it's set up in this way where Nicholson is talking about
Ben
how.
Just freeze, or is that just me?
What's up?
You're
Okay,
back. You're back.
okay.
Okay.
So he says the first of several interesting things about the Catholic Church in this movie.
There seemed to be that was like a specter I noticed hanging over it, because it was happening at the same time, but the specter of like the idea of priests touching young boys and those scandals seem to hang over the plot of the movie.
So the first thing he says about the Catholic Church is sort of positive, although it's also kind of denigrated and is not being very important, and also making it clear that, like, to the extent that he has any kind of residual warm feelings about it, it's purely an ethnic thing. It has nothing to do with religion. It says, it's a time when we had the church, but that's just another way of saying that we had each other. And then later on, when he started to indoctrinate the young Matt Damon, he's saying these like explicitly anti-religious things. The church tells you to bow and scrape and submit yourself, and don't be like that. Be an Ubermensch like I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I think for especially for Irish and also Italian people in cities like Boston, the church is such a central part of who they are, and it's the first thing that really fails. I feel like when people are developing their like a more cynical worldview, like it's really the first thing that fails for them. You know what I mean? Like religion is so ingrained into their identity, and it's like here's the church showing that like not only is it not infallible, but like it's a deeply vile and self-protecting kind of institution in these cases.
Yeah. So the stuff, the stuff about the church, the stuff about race in Boston, which also, again, it's not a the different white ethnic groups fighting each other is a big thing in the movie, but the anti-black racism stuff is how the movie starts, and it's called attention to a couple times after that, but it's not a big through line, I think, in the movie. Like you get, you start out with the busing scenes while he's talking about Irish empowerment, basically, although most of that is about fighting Italian people. And then later on, when Matt Damon is having his like golden boy montage, going through the police academy and rising through the ranks, there's a scene where he tells like a black trainee, like guys just told him, go fuck himself, and he says, you're already you're a black guy in Boston. You don't need my help to get fucked.
Yeah.
So,
it's a racial beginning of both an understanding of how these dynamics between different ethnicities have played out, because really, the war between these ethnicities really stopped because like and because of like anti-black racism, like that's kind of like the idea that Italians and Polish people. I talked about this the other day, and like even like white Jewish Americans, like these groups really became white, quote unquote, in the WASP sense of the word, because during the civil rights movement, there was some solidarity between white ethnic groups and at the beginning of the civil rights movement, between white ethnic groups and a lot of black workers, like especially in like the garment industry and stuff like that, because unions played a big part of it, and in a part of the backlash against the civil rights movement was getting all of these groups to feel like black workers were taking a piece of their what they had quote unquote earned, and you know what I mean, like so there's kind of like the resentment of it is built on like building the backlash on making people feel resentful of different races rather than different ethnicities, I guess.
Yeah, and just as a historical point, I think, Forrest, I think you're totally right that and particularly the busing was a crucial element. But I would date the sort of whitening to World War II. There's a famous movie, I think it won an Academy Award, I believe, for something called A Gentleman's Agreement, starring Gregory Peck. And it's like an anti-Semitism movie. And I think the Holocaust is really crucial for Jews, but also for other ethnic whites. Like you can't really be a virulent racist like you can in American society after World War II. I mean, you can, and there's David Duke, there's, George Wallace, and believe me, there are, but like white Protestant mainline society, the power holders, you really couldn't be. And so busing kind of solidifies that. And in Scorsese's lifetime, I think that moment is really an important moment of ethnic white solidarity. Like, I don't know, Ben or Ryan or Forrest, if you guys had like grandparents and they remember growing up in the 30s and they're like, the Irish kids used to beat the shit out of the Jewish kids who used to fight the Italian kids. That's not really the same thing in the 1970s, because there's this creation of this ethnic white identity, which is what I think is being expressed in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think certainly the idea that World War II, the Holocaust, did a lot to, certainly take away the social acceptability of anti-Semitism. I mean, like it's like if you read like literature for the early 20th century, like Fitzgerald and Hemingway and stuff like that, which even though a lot of these guys are leftists, like there's like astonishingly like just out there anti-Semitism in like most of those books.
And the Meyer, the Jewish gangster, the guy based on Arnold Rothstein, Meyer Wolf, I think his name, super anti-Semitic character. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And it's just out there in a very like unabashed way that that I don't think you'd get in the second half of the 20th century. And I think that probably I think the relationship between that becoming socially unacceptable and the race stuff is a little bit more complicated, but there's definitely an effect there, no doubt about that, whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So you see,
well, in the first half of the like an interesting thing is that in the first half of the 20th century, like in 1920 and stuff, there's virulent like anti-Italian and Catholic. Like the KKK in 1920, like the second iteration of it, like very, very blatantly came after Catholics in general, like whether it was like Irish Catholics, Italian Catholics, and as well as coming after Jewish people, and I mean adding African Americans to that. Like so, there's I think that there like war in that time period is a defining thing, because you see people killing next to each other, and like it's kind of a weird concept. Like it's kind of weird that war brings us to that point where we could be like, well, you're like in a battlefield with somebody's like sitting next to them, and like we're defining ourselves against Germans who are waging the Holocaust, and like I don't know. It's interesting that kind of is the defining moment for a lot of these divisions to start to be erased.
Yeah,
at least to me.
Yeah, no, for sure. So Matt Damon is like reared from the point where he's like so young that like part of the way that Jack Nicholson's enticing him is by buying him a comic book. and he's reared from the very beginning to play exactly the role he's going to be playing. Like you see him, he looks like he's 12, and Jack Nicholson is saying, they used to say, you grow up, you be a cop or a criminal, but
yeah, when you're facing the barrel of a gun, what's the difference?
That line.
What's the difference? Again,
am I crazy?
What's that?
That line sucks. That's a dumb line. Facing down the barrel. What's the
I like it. I like it. I think it's just Jack's delivery of it, but I like it. I mean, I wish there was more of this. I wish they had spent a little more time on Jack with young Matt Damon, so that you really had the feeling of the father-son relationship. You just get those couple of scenes, which I think were cool. I mean, I like that line, maybe, but it's a cheesy line, but just Jack's delivery of it is just so delicious. It's just perfect. But
it's kind of along the same lines.
Yeah, I want more of that.
Showing the rat.
What were you saying, Ryan?
Yeah.
Okay,
I just want more of that, so then like the later conflict that Matt Damon has would be a lot more resonant if you actually because as it is, you just don't have a feeling of their relationship. Why is it supposed to be a hard decision for him?
Yeah, and the acting is all really good. I mean, I think Mark Wahlberg is just like a blank slate, which is fine for that character. I think Alec Baldwin isn't great. I think he can be great, but it's kind of like this Trumpy, a little too much over the top in the camp. Nicholson is perfectly campy. And Leo and Damon are actually fucking both amazing. And Damon in particular.
Yeah, they're great. They're great. Yeah, they're great. They're fantastic.
He's both super charismatic, but also a blank slate, which is really hard to do. Those two are really excellent. I wish they were in more movies together. But still, I don't know. The movie just doesn't hold for me. I just do not think it's a good movie.
So we I think that it could have been because like part of why I was so angry at the ending is that there were things that there are flaws that we've already talked about, but right up until that last 20 minutes or whatever, both times I saw it, I was really enjoying it, and it just felt like that thing that kids will do where you're writing a story and everybody writes a line and you pass it on to the next person and some jerk will be oh, it blew up.
And then he gets shot in the head while he's stepping off the elevator. And now what are you going to do with the story?
Yeah, because it was nonsensical, and it was nonsensicalness that all seemed to be about giving there an excuse for everybody to run around and shoot each other at the end, which was just a weird, cheap ending to that movie.
It was interesting watching Infernal Affairs though, because a lot of that's taken right from that movie, and it's interesting seeing. It was interesting watching Infernal Affairs for the reason that a lot of the scenes where they're just kind of living their lives and it's build up and filler are removed from that movie, but then the bigger scenes are kind of left in, because it just doesn't require that almost I guess European existential flavor to it, where so many of the scenes are just forgettable. Why should I do this? Myself is evolving. You know what I mean? So, so those scenes are directly taken from that movie, which was interesting to
well, and I wonder if that's part of the problem, right? Because if they were trying to. I mean, I almost not that this deserves to even be mentioned in the same as imperfect a movie as this is, not that this even deserves to be mentioned in the same breath, but think about that. I am blanking on the name of that TV show. Kevin Spacey is the president.
House of Cards.
Oh, yeah, House of Cards.
Right? It's almost I wonder if it's almost one of these things the way that the American version of House of Cards never made any sense because they were trying way too hard to do the structure of this British show where, because they have a completely different political system, it actually makes sense that you could climb the ladder by scheming against people.
Yeah, it made no sense. He was in the House of Representatives. It's ridiculous. It makes absolutely the most sense. They should have made him Secretary of State or something.
Yeah.
That would have made a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
The exact equivalent of somebody climbing the ladder within a parliamentary system in a completely different system where that just doesn't work. That you have to actually be charismatic and get people to vote for you for that individual office.
Exactly. Yeah, it works when people don't actually vote for the prime minister. It doesn't work when you have to somehow get the entire country to vote for you. You don't do that by a bunch of backroom deals.
Exactly.
At least not now.
Yeah. So, you never did it quite to that extent.
Yeah.
You still had to you couldn't just
quite to that. Not quite in that. Yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't have. Yeah, in the American system, even when the nominee was maybe being picked in a back room, the president still doesn't just become president by default because their party wins a majority in Congress.
Yeah.
They actually have to get people to vote for them individually. So I don't know if it was the same kind of problem that they were trying to. Since I haven't seen Infernal Affairs, they were trying too hard to imitate the beats of a different movie. That
I think at times, I think the problem that I have with The Departed is it's a very uneven movie. So I think at times, I think some of the best scenes are taken right from Infernal Affairs, but I also think some of the worst, some of the most excessive scenes are kind of trying to copy beats from Infernal Affairs, and it ends up being a fairly uneven movie because they spend so much time on things that they don't need to, and then the things that they do need to spend time on seem really rushed.
Yeah, I think
the problem just that Scorsese sucks at adapting films. Does he ever do this with other movies? Are there any of his other movies film adaptations?
I don't think so. Yeah,
not that I can think of.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the things that worked the least in this movie, right? The Jack Nicholson character was great. The Leo character was great. And both of those felt very developed to me. Matt Damon maybe a little bit less, but I agree with everything that Danny said about the way that he did the performance. Lost Danny. Where this is, I think we've had 12 times more technical difficulties in the stream than any previous stream. There we go.
This is all right.
So, yep.
Oh, I think Bessner is just trying to climb his way up the ladder. Look, he's.
Yeah. Do I have to disconnect and come back in to get my spot back?
Look, time was if something like this happened, I would just kill everybody else in the stream.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So there is this interesting thing. I know we haven't had I know we haven't been going through the plot of the movie quite as linearly as we usually do. I think having the I think for various reasons that didn't happen today. That's fine, but
maybe we should rethink forward. Maybe that's
so we have Matt Damon becomes Jack Nicholson's mole in the Boston Police Department, for the Irish Mafia, and at the same time, Leo has just come out of the academy. There's this really interesting thing with where he's being interviewed for this position, as a undercover guy for the Special Investigations Unit, which is run by Martin Sheen, who's pretty much playing this, whatever. As I think we established, Apocalypse Now broke him, and now this is all he seems to be able to do. This sort of comforting, fatherish, sort of person, that he does in every movie. So it's Martin Sheen at the head of it, and then there is this really weird, interesting thing where fatherly, very pious family man, Martin Sheen, very, very soft spoken, is the head of it, and then Mark Wahlberg has this really bizarre relationship to him that's like he almost feels like he's somebody who Leo is hallucinating as going to be like on the desk while he's talking to Martin Sheen.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
he's
Yeah,
also
just an
all right,
yeah.
go.
No, I was just gonna say he's just such an over the top performance, Mark Wahlberg. just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Entertaining, but ridiculous.
Yeah. Like it almost feels like he's like a Tyler Durden character or something. It looks so unlikely that this guy would really be doing this stuff. That he's sitting on the desk.
I mean, he's like an SNL skit of a guy from Boston. He doesn't, it's not a real guy from Boston.
Yeah, exactly.
He has that scared straight, like the way that he does dialogue too, where he's like, you know what I mean, like where they're like going around the jail and they're like I don't know. It is really.
I just want to mention, I do think that montage with Leo in prison is really good. It's like in a movie that's not very good. That I think that montage with the Dropkick Murphys song is one of the best montages in Scorsese's career. That like pumps you. I remember the first time I saw it in theaters, I'm like, damn, this movie's going to be awesome. And it wasn't, but that is a great montage. And I just wanted to like underline that. If I was doing like a retrospective, that would be it. That would be one of the top 10 Scorsese scenes.
I feel like you could put that song like in the background of anything though. Like somebody could just be like, I don't know, like just walk.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, was it awesome just because of the Dropkick Murphys, or was it actually awesome?
Music makes a scene, that's the choice.
Yeah, although that is also, that could also be really dangerous. I'm thinking of I think it was the American version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. They did this preview where they had Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song playing in the background, and it was enough that it was like, oh my God, this movie looks amazing. And then you actually because that's not playing in every scene, none of it seems quite that awesome. But yeah, so they have so Leo, we find out is this guy who comes from a broken family situation, such that he was spent his like most of his time on the North Shore, much more prosperous circumstances. Wahlberg keeps screaming at him that he's this like lace curtain Irish motherfucker, who doesn't understand Southie. And which goes to Forrest scared straight point, and then he.
You think I've never been to Southie?
Did you say Black Irish in this?
I don't remember that.
No, did I make that up? Because I thought he refers to himself as Black Irish, but I might. I
mean, he might have it. I just missed it. But then, but on weekends,
you're never going to be a cop.
That's right. He would spend his time talking to. He would spend his time with his dad in Southie, and he had different accents for which one he was at, and he had and he was essentially two different people, and this establishes, and also he's got tons of anger issues, and he's always beating people up, so this makes him perfect as the police mole in the Irish mafia. So
besides that, I mean, one thing that makes the movie feel uneven and not make sense is that scene, because they highlight how he's not really I don't know, like they don't think that he's going to be a great mole, and then his like SAT scores are good, like, you know what I mean? Like he could be anything. They like make that point over and over again. They make that point with his father too. Like his father could have been anything, and he chooses to be, this underground, like on an underground mole. Like it doesn't really make sense. Like sure, like he wants to do like good in the world, but like then that's not really reflected in anything for the rest of the movie. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you guys had a different reading on that.
No, I think that's right. I think that's right, and it just again points to the confusion of the movie. It's a confused movie in a lot of respects.
Yeah, so they spend a lot of time setting up, because they're obviously doing this thing where Damon's role in the police department and Leo's role in the Irish Mafia are parallel, right? They're both they're both undercover representing the other organization, and they go to a lot of effort to establish that they have parallel lives. Some of it works, some of it gets a little silly, but that's what a lot of the movie is spent on, including this very strange love story because I don't remember the character's name. We'll just call her Little Miss Freud. I think that's what that Jack Nicholson calls her at one point, the shrink. So when Matt Damon is picking up Little Miss Freud, I bought it because he's like really outgoing and charismatic and successful, and it's like those are pretty good scenes. When she randomly starts hooking up with Leo, that was just bizarre because she meets him as a patient. He seems incredibly fucked up as a patient, and then like.
Yeah, so fucked up that she's like, I'm not going to work with you anymore. I'm sending you off to someone else.
And then somehow
I'm with you, but I am going to sleep with you.
He follows that up with, okay, so if you're going to transfer me to another therapist, then like then there's no problem having dinner with me, and somehow she does it. Like it was like deeply weird that there's like no spark, there's no like anything. Oh,
there's no chemistry with Vera Farmiga, I believe, right? Vera Farmiga.
Yeah.
Either of them. It's such a weird thing. It's like it goes wrong in so many ways. It's very compelling, actually. Now it's like compelling to analyze. There's no chemistry. The plot makes no sense, and then she's like really just like kind of in a different movie. It's just so weird, especially because Scorsese has done great romances. The Sharon Stone Ace romance, the Karen Henry romance, after hours romance. So it's so weird how he just like nails it differently on this one.
Yeah, and even in this movie, one of the romances with the same character was pretty good. Like this, it's just bizarre, and it's weird too. It like so some of it maybe, I mean, which is weird because they're both good actors, but like some of it maybe is the acting, but some of it is the writing. Like a lot of it's the writing. There's even this weird thing where he keeps being like, so hey, how do you feel about your boyfriend? Why is it that you're cheating on your boyfriend with me? And she's just like, oh, I don't know, whatever. Let's change the subject.
Well, they seem to set up that she feels like she made a choice in choosing Matt Damon, and it was the choice she was supposed to make. And maybe she's having doubts about that, but then they don't really go back to those doubts later in the movie. And she's lying to him, but then at the same time, like she's truthful about other things. So like it's this inconsistency again that they seem like they try to set up something where she feels like she's supposed to be with this cop that's like doing well for himself, and she doesn't necessarily feel like that's where she wants to be. But then it doesn't really make sense that she would be like, no, the down, like the other side of that is like, all right, let me just sleep with this like Southie criminal ex-cop guy.
Yeah, who was like she stormed like basically like shut down their therapy session because he was obviously trying to get her to to give him drugs. Like it's I don't believe that was I don't believe that would have played out that way. So then. There is actually, as we were talking about this, it occurred to me that, like, in a weird way, this movie felt like it really wanted to be like a 5-season HBO show. And for some reason, they were trying to cram it into a 2.5-hour movie, and it didn't quite work. So you had all of these amazing scenes. You had all these amazing beats of dialogue that would have been like, oh, man, you remember that episode where they did that? But they were just trying to jam them together and develop all of these incredibly elaborate things within the frame of this 2.5-hour movie. And that almost like makes you be able to see why they went the way that they did at the end, even though it was a terrible choice. But the first thing you like,
I mean, there's also yeah.
Oh no, go ahead. I was just gonna say I think that's interesting. Like I'm thinking of this as an HBO show now, and like, because like the inherent story is like the concept of like, let's watch these two different rats, one in the police department, one in the mafia, and watch their parallel lives. Like, play that out over an extended period of time, and you could throw in a bunch of flashbacks with the young Matt Damon kid, and really flesh out the relationship between him and the Jack Nicholson character. Like, that could be great. So, like, maybe a big part of the problem is just trying to do this kind of story in the context of a movie.
Yeah, just quickly, it was before that, basically, right? It was like just before streaming. So that I feel like even on people's radars. If this movie is made even 5 years later, I think there's a talk about making it a TV show. And Scorsese has made great TV shows like Vinyl, the HBO show Bobby Cannavale, which is one of the worst shows I've ever seen in my entire life. But I think it would have been better. Ben, before we go on, I have a question. Is that a Summit Ice shirt?
Oh no, this is actually this is actually appropriate for the movie live stream. This is
nice. Nice.
So yeah, and then the one thing I did want to bring up before we, obviously, since we got to cut this off at 8:30, we don't want to spend too much more time on the plot before we get to the end, but is that the one big criminal thing you see that like is not just sort of backstory or something that's part of a montage to build something up, but that the movie really focuses on for multiple scenes, is this thing with the stolen microprocessors that it first seems like they're going to sell to the Chinese government, and then it turns out that I don't know, I guess they stole, or maybe nobody really stole the microprocessors. It was all an elaborate setup, but what they sell the Chinese are fake ones, and it's an interesting thing because it sets up the big plot twist that Jack Nicholson's actually a protected FBI informant, and so of course he'd be selling the Chinese the fake microprocessors, but it also in a way that weirdly connects to his opening rant about the struggle to control different neighborhoods in Boston and all of that. It lets Jack Nicholson, his irritation at the Chinese agents is this sort of weirdly patriotic thing. In this country, this is how we do it.
Yeah.
But that's also a street smart thing, because he's saying that in this country, it doesn't add inches to your dick. It's a felony. You know what I mean? There is a weird street smart kind of allowing his character to have some kind of sanity, I guess, to the way that he does things, which he doesn't. At no point does he. Nothing about that character would make you think that he's really that concerned about whether, a certain type of gun is a felony. You know what I mean? An assault weapon is a felony. I don't know. It's kind of
that's true, because for most of the movie, he's so confident that he has everything wrapped up and he doesn't need to worry about any of this stuff. There's the scene towards the end where he's in the car, with his henchmen, including Leo, and he sees that the cops are tailing him, and instead of being oh shit, let's go back, let's abort it for tonight and do this another night. Let's shake them. Let's do anything. He's all right, this is an irritation. I'm going to call my guy in the police department and make him get rid of the tail for me, which is such an extreme display of power that it is a little inconsistent with him being concerned about which guns or which kind of felony.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the oh, sorry, Ryan.
Oh no, I mean, I was also I just wanted to actually ask, how believable, because I'd forgotten about this. I'd forgotten a lot about this movie, but the twist that he's an FBI informant, how believable did you guys find that? To me, it just seemed so insanely implausible. Well,
that's Whitey Bulger, right? This is the whole Whitey Bulger thing.
Yeah.
So it's actually real, right? Whitey Bulger was an FBI.
Okay.
for decades and decades.
Yeah. So were they still letting Whitey Bulger run around and murder people and stuff while he's an informant?
I think so, right? I mean, I'm not sure. It wasn't like quite letting him go around and murder, but like it was more insane than one would think.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly, Ben, you might.
Fair enough.
Oh no, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I vaguely knew that about Whitey Bulger, but I don't know. That's a good question. Like I think I could. Yeah. I think I could buy that about Nicholson. That might be true. Like within the world of the movie, you know, that I could maybe believe that. I think that just how cocky he was about the police thing, I had trouble believing that. Like that.
I actually think that's just not accurate, because there was a big report that came out when Whitey Bulger was arrested in LA, and he used to do shit like that. He used to like tell people like and just go kill people and be like a real psychopath. So it's ironic. It's like that seems unbelievable, but that's actually kind of happened.
That's actually that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe I have a bad idea about how these things work, but like how high up was Whitey Bulger? Was he like the kingpin, like Jack Nicholson's character? Yeah.
He ran Boston. Yeah.
Okay.
The kingpin of Southie for like decades.
Okay.
It's really a crazy Whitey Bulger story is really insane. They made a terrible movie.
Maybe this is a better movie than I thought then.
Yeah.
Well, they're also building it up that the cops don't like the firemen. The cops that are working for the state don't like the feds. The cops that are working locally don't like this. So it's kind of this thing where there's no communication between any of these groups of law enforcement. So in that, I guess it's somewhat believable that all of a sudden the FBI is kind of compromised because this character is an informant. So I think that's what they're trying to set you up to feel like none of these agencies are really like they're supposed to be working together, but they're not talking to each other. They're all keeping each other in the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think I'll. So I think again, despite all the flaws we've been talking about, I would have been defending this movie much more than I have been, if not for the last half hour of it, which was bizarre. So after. Matt Damon finds out that Jack Nicholson is an FBI informant, so he turns on him. You know, he kills him. He then Leo is back in the police department. So far, you know, with some things more than others in ways we've talked about.
They didn't build up the fact that Matt Damon found out he was a police informant.
No, that was very sudden. But
he sees it on a piece of paper and he was like, "Oh, an FBI informant. Well, I guess I better kill him." Like,
yeah. Which again goes to the point about how this should have been a 5-season HBO show, so you could actually build
season 3 finale. He's sitting there looking at it. He's like, an FBI informant. Oh God!
Finale. That next season. That's the end of season 4. Then season 5 is leading up to what actually happens. Maybe that's the end of season 3. That will be season 4, and then you could do a season to somehow resolve it, so you don't have to do the acidine thing they did.
Well, it's like the Breaking
season
Bad
5
thing,
is just
where
everyone shoots everyone else.
Yeah. So this is the thing. So far, unevenly, some things more than others, but I more or less can suspend belief in everything's happened up until Leo is in Matt Damon's office. Damon is about to restore his identity. That, since of course he had to be convicted of a crime, be officially kicked out, all this stuff. So have it reestablished that all these crimes he was committed as an undercover cop. His name is restored. This is about to happen. This is literally 2 minutes away from it happening. And then Damon is off in the other room doing that. And Leo sees the this envelope that, it was like a plot point from earlier in the movie that he helped write the thing outside of it, that he knows is something that was given to him to Damon by Jack Nicholson. All right. Why the fuck didn't he just wait the 90 seconds that you would have had to wait to get his identity restored, and then like the next day or something, or like whatever, that night, right? He could have taken his papers, he could have turned around, talked to anybody at this police station and said, hey, I just figured this out about Matt Damon, or whatever. He could have not done it that night, and he could have spent a few days with his identity restored, building a case that he could have then, because his identity would have been restored, taken to, you know, the authorities, and he would have been totally fine. But for some inexplicable reason, he doesn't do that. Instead, he just disappears, thus tipping off Damon that he knows about him, so Damon can delete his file, and thus, like, all of the proof that he was actually an undercover cop. So he's like just surrendered the rest of his life for no reason whatsoever.
And it's not like he doesn't even like they make a point of making sure you know that he knows that Damon has the power to erase his file, because like Wahlberg threatens to do that earlier in the movie. So he knows that now Damon is the only one left who knows his identity and could erase his file. And he chooses just to run out and tip off to Damon that he knows that Damon's threat.
And then later, you know, when he's accumulated this evidence, and it's such a lazy thing that like he just sort of says in passing, oh, for some reason, you know, Jack Nicholson trusted me more than anybody else, which he would not have, obviously.
Maybe more than anybody left. Like,
he's the person Jack Nicholson would have trusted the least. But for some reason, Jack Nicholson trusted him the most. And so in his will, he left him these recordings of himself with Damon that he conveniently taken. But even then, instead of doing something that might actually make sense, like, I don't know, he could have had these sent to Alec Baldwin's character, you know, who seemed to, you know, to outrank Damon. And then that would have taken care of it, presumably, or at least would have taken Damon out of the picture. Maybe at that point, it would have been too late for Leo to get his identity restored. But, you know, he could have tried. He could have done, you know, who knows, right?
Yeah.
But instead of doing anything like that, he tauntingly sends the recording to Damon for, I don't understand why. And
also
then
doesn't know that the girlfriend that he's been seeing is the same girlfriend as Matt Damon's girlfriend. So it just kind of shows up at their house, and then she's like, oh wow, like that's the guy that I've been sleeping with, and this is the guy. Like she doesn't put it together until it's written on the piece of, like, on the envelope in front of her.
But it's such a weird thing, because like then he's like, meet me at this abandoned building and I'm not going to bring anybody else. Like it just seemed like the plan is very weird. Right, you know, that's like this guy who's like extremely well connected in both the police and the Irish mafia, so he will most certainly have backup. But I'm just going to go meet him by myself, and then I'm somehow going to defeat him from there.
He wants to call the one cop that he had the one scene with in the beginning, where he makes the joke like, "Oh, you don't need to have any more problems. You're black," like that cop. At the very beginning, he has that one scene with Anthony Anderson where like you're supposed to get like, oh, they were friends in the academy, but they never bring up that friendship again. And also, he's at the police station at one point, and that guy doesn't really recognize him, I don't think, or maybe he does. I don't know. He calls that guy for some reason.
Yeah, it was such a weird thing. And then like he's at the bottom of the elevator, and conveniently, there's somebody else who just in terms of like what you would learn in like some night class for wannabe screenwriters in LA, like that this is just such weird like plot construction that there's this character who there's been no hint at any time in the last 2.5 hours that there was this other Irish mafia mole in the police department, but he just pops up out of nowhere to conveniently shoot Leo, announces to Damon, "Oh, I too am a Irish mafia mole, come to rescue you. We gotta stick together," so that Damon can then shoot him.
That's actually one of the few things that makes more sense if you watch Infernal Affairs, because at the beginning, the guy, the gangster, has a bunch of young boys that he's setting up to bring into the police station and into the police force, and some of them make it and some of them don't. So in Infernal Affairs, when you finally find out at the end of it that guy is the other guy that's working for that boss. You're like, oh yeah, at the beginning there was like, and they even flash back to it. There's like 10 kids that they set up in the police station. That you're like, oh okay, like so that's another one of the kids. Like I wondered what happened to those kids, and then that scene happens. But in this case, they make one thing about it. They say, oh, one of his informants in the police department at one point, but that's the only time they reference that there's multiple of them.
Yeah,
it's a pretty dumb movie.
No, again, like tons of great stuff about it. So much good dialogue, so many good scenes, some fantastic performances, but the way the movie is put together is deeply dumb.
Yeah.
All right. I know Danny and I both have to get off in a pretty tight schedule the next couple of minutes, but
so shall we sing the Internationale and sign off?
Yeah.
We should do Gangs in New York in a few weeks, like 3-4 weeks. Let's do Gangs in New York if you guys are down.
Let's do it.
Sure.
Which movie are we doing next week? We had one that we were...
For next week, Danny's gonna be off, but for next week, Micah should be back, and I want to see. I haven't heard back yet, but I got in touch with Jeremy Johnson to see if next week would work with him, because that's a because I want to do Scanner Darkly with him. So if that works for Forrest and Ryan,
Sure.
Micah is also great. I want to do that. So tentatively Scanner Darkly next week. But Ryan, good movie?
Not a good movie.
Okay, not a good movie. All right. We're not going to go all the way to bad movie. Not a good movie. That's fair.
Not a good movie. Yeah,
that's very fair. Somebody in the chat, by the way, said we should do American Beauty, which would be a really weird one to do, because it's. I mean, I love that movie. Right, seen it many times. I think it's a fantastic movie, but like, I think it'd be very weird to rewatch now.
It is the ultimate end of history.
It would be tough to do now. Yeah.
I think knowing how little space there is between Spacey and his character, it'd be a very strange, very strange one to watch.
I think the next Scorsese one we do should be Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, for so Taxi Driver, I do definitely want to do Taxi Driver. So if we do Taxi Driver, since actually. So my brother David wants to talk about Taxi Driver with us, but that would mean we'd either have to do it on a weekend, or start it a little bit later at night, because he lives in Los Angeles. So and he has like a normal person job where you don't get off until 5. But yeah, we should do Taxi Driver at some point in the future. But yeah, in like 3 weeks or something. When Daddy's back, we should do Gangs of New York, and tentatively we'll do Scanner Darkly next time. But really appreciate all of you guys for doing this, and everybody for fighting through their various technical difficulties. I'm glad we managed to do this. I don't think I would have rewatched The Departed if we hadn't been doing it for this, and despite everything, I'm glad that I did. So.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thanks, guys. Till next time. And I should say real quick that on Thursday, the patron bonus episode is coming out with Derek Varn and Nia Cola arguing about modern monetary theory. On Friday, I am doing the inaugural Philosophy Friday live stream with my wife Jennifer, and on Sunday, the Doug Lane, Pascal Robert, and Erica Decken are going to be joining me for the debate series to watch and break down Matt Taibbi's Herbert Marcuse debate with that guy Escrow. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. So anyway, good stuff coming up, but got to go now. So thanks to everybody for coming. Thanks to all of you guys for participating. left is best.